I'm Jeff Biggs, host of the Cowboys Squad Show, and the Cowboys are 6-7-1, and this is not a lot of fun.
I'm Marcus Mosher, and it's draft season.
I'm Landon McCool, and I'm frankly just really distracted by the 6-7 reference that was done early. I can't believe it.
Glenn Stretch Smith, and just the whole thought of that makes my butt itch.
How about them Cowboys? It's the Cowboys Squad. Everything Dallas Cowboys every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from America's team the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. It's the Cowboys Squad Show, starting now.
Landon, it was you that inspired the one.
Hey, listen, I'm more mad that it wasn't me who said it than anything else, to be honest.
So bad.
Yeah, if they would have won, it would have changed. I would have preferred they would have won.
I agree.
To that. But anyway, welcome to another edition of the Cowboys Squad Show. And after 3 straight wins, the Cowboys crashed with back-to-back losses, and they are now on the brink of elimination officially as they get set to play their home finale on Sunday against the Bolts, although they could find out on Saturday that they have been eliminated. We'll find out. As always, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. As always, on this 10 days until Christmas or a week, almost a week. We're getting close. Either way.
Today, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
There we go. As we start with a welcome to the co-hosts of the daily Locked On Cowboys podcast, Marcus Mosher and Landon McCool, along with the coach, former Cowboys coach, Glenn Stretch Smith. Great to be with you guys again. Wish it was after an important win, kind of changed things a lot, but here we are. Coming up on the show tonight, we're going to talk about the very latest with the Cowboys on and off the field. As I said, must win again on Sunday against the Chargers. And will it be the final home game for DC Matt Eberflus? We'll get into that. But first, I'm going to mix it up a little bit tonight, guys. Marcus, Landon, I'm going to start with a fill-in-the-blank question this time, all right, just to mix it up a little bit so we're not doing the same thing. For you both, the Cowboys collapsed in these last 2 games after they had all that momentum from 3 wins in a row. The Cowboys collapsed because
They're not very good. I think they had some really nice wins, right? They had the win over the Philadelphia and the win over Kansas City were good wins. But this team is still incredibly flawed, really on both sides of the ball, but obviously more on defense. And you get into some of these games and you're just you have to play almost a perfect game on defense just to have a chance. And that has not been the case. You play the Lions, you're significantly outmanned on that side of the ball. And then against Minnesota, J.J. McCarthy, he's got wide open receivers all over the field. And it shouldn't be unexpected. Like this, we knew this defense was going to really struggle this year. They've been playing a lot of new guys. They have a new defensive coordinator. I don't know why we would have expected anything else.
Yeah, I don't really disagree with any of that. I think if I'm filling in the blank, I'm saying the defense, kind of fell back to earth where we thought it was, and I think we got a lot of improvement from this team, maybe specifically on in run defense after the trade deadline. And I think we made some improvements as a pass defense as well. But I also think that you were talking about a team that was, 32nd or 31st in almost every measurable type of metric on pass defense. And so, there's only so much you're going to be able to do about that during the trade deadline and kind of getting some of those players back without making, major personnel or scheme.
Well, and Landon, let me ask you this: could it just have been that they hit 3 slumping offenses with the Raiders, who have 100%. Been bad all year, the Eagles, who were in the middle of a slump on offense, and then Kansas City, that they've struggled all year to score points?
Yeah, I mean, I'll even put a finer point on that. It's 3 offenses that hit a slump that are brand names, right? That on a surface level, from a 10,000-foot view, at the beginning of the season, if you had told us that the Cowboys had beaten Kansas City and Philadelphia in 4 days, apart, we would have been excited. And look, we should be excited about that. Like, I'm not, downplaying it. I think what it did is it artificially inflated our expectations for a team that probably was still a year away from being a playoff, mover and shaker. And I think it made us kind of, believe that this was a group that could overcome some of the shortcomings on the defense, on offense. But the truth of the matter is that it's unrealistic to expect them to face kind of a hobbled teams the way they did. It's unrealistic to think that they would play the kind of almost pristine, perfect type of offensive football that they need to overcome the issues on defense. And ultimately, they got some surprising results. Maybe because we all just put expectations too high after a series of really good teams that maybe flawed opponents.
Coach, what do you think?
I mean, it's a defense that gave up 27 points to Jacoby Brissett. I mean, they gave and did I think that they made some strides? Maybe. The problem I have is, you guys have heard me say this so many times, I mean, it's a defense that plays with terrible technique. And I don't care what you're looking at. I don't care if it's a secondary. I don't care if it's the linebackers at times. I don't care if it's the leverage on the edge at times. They don't play with good, sound technique. Do I think the cast of guys that are out there needs to be better? Absolutely. But I also think I could take 10 soldiers and I could line them up and they'd at least play with the correct leverage. They'd at least know what to do. Are they going to get beat? Absolutely. But what I don't like is just this far into the season, continuing to talk about the same things that we've talked about all year, which is leverage, head placement, hand placement, where your eyes are. I mean, it really is. It's one of those things where you sit back and you go, okay, either the message is wrong, or the messenger is wrong. And how are you going to get this straightened out? And I think that's something that they've come to the conclusion of saying, hey, we got to get to the end of the season and we got to self-scout this thing and we got to take a look at it. And we got to figure out why we're still so bad at doing the things that should have been corrected week 1 of OTAs.
And Jeff, just to show how poorly they play this year, the run defense has been better. And honestly, they've made an effort to get better on that side of the ball. And they have. But compared to what they have on the other side of the ball, right now, Dak Prescott has a passer rating of 99, one of the highest in the league, right? The Cowboys are allowing a passer rating of a 109.1. There's only 2 quarterbacks in the league right now that have a higher passer rating than that, and that's Matt Stafford and Jared Goff. That basically means that you are playing against the NFL MVP every single week. That's the kind of performance that you're giving up week in and week out. It's unbelievable how bad they've been on that side of the ball.
JJ looked like the MVP a little bit the other night. Can I offer a different take to what you guys are saying? And I want your feedback. What was really disappointing to me, the loss to the Lions was bad. We talked about that last week. Felt like the Lions raised their game to just to a different level, and they won it. But I really thought that after that loss and with the extra time off and all that was at stake, where you knew you had to win, I thought they were going to come out on fire and just dominate offensively, just go nuts, play with a ton of energy. And I don't know. It just didn't. Maybe I'm reading something that's not there, but it seemed like
they did a lot of good stuff offensively. It's just, they ultimately didn't score touchdowns when they kicked field goals when they needed to score touchdowns, and that was a problem. But certainly the biggest problem is that Minnesota had no business keeping pace with this Dallas offense, and they did, and that has everything to do with the fact that JJ McCarthy was made to look like, a much better quarterback than I think any of us anticipated showing up on Sunday, and I don't think it's because JJ McCarthy was particularly elite. I mean, I feel like he even when the Cowboys gave him opportunities, he was still missing throws high and wide and with wide open receivers. But the Cowboys also gave him plenty of opportunity. They didn't, they didn't rush the passer very well at all. They didn't seem to affect JJ McCarthy too much in his ability to throw the football. And at the end of the day, they still have, two of the best, maybe one of the best duos of wide receivers on their side with Jefferson and Addison. So, I think if the one thing that they couldn't afford to do was give JJ McCarthy all the time in the world to throw the football. And that's specifically what they did. And they got shredded just like they had been shredded, consistently throughout the season in the passing game.
Well, and Jerry Jones mentioned that earlier this week on the radio, basically saying it's not a great sign when all of these quarterbacks who are struggling are having their best games of the season against us. We'll talk about Matt Eberflus's future in a little bit, but I thought Jerry even acknowledging that's a telltale sign of maybe what's going to happen.
I agree.
Any thoughts, Coach?
No, I mean, we're to me, we get to the point here where we're beating a dead horse with this scenario. I mean, they're not coached very well, okay. And I don't know, I really don't know how differently to say it. I'm not I'll never get on here and advocate to get rid of anybody, fire anybody. I mean, I think that's the easy knee-jerk thing to say. But at what point does bad football just not go away? And we're too far into the season to be talking about the same.
Can I just say real quick, I don't want to change defensive coordinators. I mean, I'd hate the idea that the Cowboys have constantly changed over this defensive coordinator position over and over again. But I also feel like, man, you've got to show me something in order to keep you. That's where I think I stand with this, is that it feels pretty indefensible what the defensive coaching staff has done, for the most part throughout the season. And I think we've talked about it throughout the season. So I think I've kind of just, and I've been prescribing against it for the last few weeks, but I think I've finally reached a point, me personally, that it feels like I haven't seen anything that I think positive that has been derived from this defensive coordinator or the staff. I don't even know what the loss would be at this point for not having continuity with this coaching staff. So I think I've turned around on this to the point where I don't feel like I ever saw enough positive. I mean, even just a crumb or something to hold on to that makes me feel like there's something to work forward here. I mean, Eberflus was supposed to be, a linebacker whisperer, and the linebackers are the worst thing on this team. So,
well, let's reverse handicap this a little bit. No. What do they do any good?
That's what I'm saying, Coach. I'm
talking about. Give me one specific thing
on defense or on both sides of the ball
that they do that's any good. And I'm talking about on the defensive side.
Yeah,
they don't set the edge. They don't play the perimeter. They don't play with leverage, and that guy's run through the middle of the defense.
I think
we could just sit here and just go on and on.
That's why we're having this. I think that's why this conversation to me isn't just, hey, let's regroup next year and kind of build off of what we learned, or whatever. That's why the conversation needs to be about a new defensive coordinator, because you're right. What do they do well? What's the one thing I can at least point to that we can build on? And I feel like at this point, maybe you got a glimpse into something that it could have been an ember of an idea, something in that 3-game run that they won. But I think since then, that's all been disproven, I think, and kind of reeled back. So at this point, as we go into, what is it, Marcus, week 16 now? Are you serious? I still don't have any concept for what the Cowboys could, huddle around and blow and kind of, try to wisp up into a fire that could catch fire to, become something. There's just nothing.
And that's why.
And so don't you think that's the reason that Diggs is so disenchanted with what's going on?
I think it's certainly, yeah, it contributes to that. Absolutely.
The other thing is that I'm struggling with is why should the final 3 games have any determining factor of what the Cowboys do in the offseason at defensive coordinator? You're playing a team this week against the Chargers who are without their top 4 offensive tackles. And then in week 17 and 18, you're playing a 2-12 team and a 3-11 team that just benched their starting quarterback for the final, 3 weeks of the season. These are 3 bad offenses. And I just don't want them to go out there and have decent days and think that they're suddenly turning the corner, because it's not. You're just playing 3 teams that are really beat up right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm for empty the roster over there. Let's get some guys off the practice squad. Let's get some guys in the game. Let's evaluate what you do have, because if in fact you're still evaluating whether the coaches are getting it done week 15 or 16, whatever you want to call it, then you are wrong.
It feels like the hay is in the barn at this point, right?
Well,
like
I would say
know.
that I think that the floor for how the ceiling for how they feel isn't moving. Like, I don't think there's anything that they could do these last 3 games that's going to, budge them on feeling better about where this is. But I do think there is further down that they can go, because if they don't play, like if effort drops off, like if suddenly the players aren't even playing anymore and there's quit on that defense, I think there could be a case where he gets fired before the end of the season. And I think that's really where this can go, is it a further negative situation. I don't know. I agree with you, Marcus. Ultimately, like we're not getting any positive reviews or anything out of these last 3 games where you feel like, oh, that moved the needle enough for me to change my mind about Eberflus. But what I do think it can do is that if there are any people that still have reservation about, again, all the reasons why it's bad to go have a 4th defensive coordinator regime fired in 4 years, I think it will basically kill whatever argument they have. Because if this team quits on this defensive coordinator before the end of the first year, like, what are we even coming back to at this point?
I mean, he's 0-3-1 against the division he came out of, and the 1 was when he had scored 40. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think the Cowboys are 0-5-1 against non-NFC East teams in the NFC. Like they're really struggling in the conference.
And again, I think we have also given him the benefit of a doubt. We have throughout the season said we understand that the situation. A part of it is he got thrown into a terrible situation with the Parsons situation and with everything that went around that. Like, I understand that there is circumstance around this, but beyond that, like, it's a lot of like what Coach is saying. Like, the fact that they can't go through the entire season without kind of cleaning up very basic technique problems, that they still struggle to communicate or get, they're still struggling to get packages of folks onto the field in time for the snap in this last game against Minnesota at home. So it's like, ultimately there's just too much, very basic stuff that feels broken for me to feel comfortable about trying to come back and restart this with this same coach.
All right, let's take our first time out. When we come back, we'll kind of circle back around on this. I also want to hit on something that you brought up, both of you, about the final 3 games and what the game plan is going to be for the Cowboys, how they finish up. We'll get into that. We have some injury updates from practice as well. All that coming up on the Cowboys Squad Show. I want to talk to you about Rocket Money, because if you ever feel like your money just disappears each month, it happens fast, and you got a few subscriptions here, an impulse buy there, and suddenly the numbers in your bank account don't match the numbers in your head. Rocket Money helps you get clarity, track every dollar, and you can stay in control of your finances, because managing your money should not feel like a second job. Rocket Money does the heavy lifting for you so you can save more and stress less. Now, one thing Rocket Money does, it finds subscriptions that maybe you forgot you were paying for, helps you clean them up quickly, and you can see all of your spending on one dashboard, which really makes it easier to understand where your money is going. And they also have bill alerts and spending notifications that can help you catch small things before they turn into big expenses. So take control of your finances. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, we're back. The Cowboys Squad Show. Marcus Mosher, Landon McCool, and former Cowboys coach Glenn Smith. All right, so we've already kind of hit on it. Matt Eberflus has really been under fire all season long. Had a little bit of a reprieve when the Cowboys won 3 in a row. It kind of felt like maybe they were turning a corner after the trades. They got some help on the D-line and got some bodies back, and you thought, okay, this defense is going to come together, and hopefully they can improve just enough to give the offense, the Cowboys' great offense, the opportunity to win games, and then it just completely fell apart. Sunday night, though, not a good look. Jerry Jones has made his comments. You guys already touched on it in our last segment, but it feels like the Eberflus farewell is pretty much a done deal at this time.
Done deal is probably a little strong, but I do think we're trending in that direction.
Okay.
I think Eberflus would need to show a lot over the next couple of weeks, and I just don't know. I don't even know what the bar is. But, Jeff, one of the things that I'm really curious to see what happens, if the Cowboys decide to move on from Matt Eberflus, do they hire a defensive head coach, or sorry, a defensive coordinator that can bring in his own staff, or do they force current coaches to stay under a new defensive coordinator? Because I'll give you an example. I know there's a lot of love in the building for Aaron Whitecotton, the Cowboys defensive line coach. I think he's done a really good job this year. I don't want to see him leave, but I don't necessarily want to see a situation where the Cowboys are forcing him onto a new defensive coordinator, because that's how you get these defenses that just don't work together. They don't mesh because you've got differing beliefs. So that's what I'm fascinated to see is, did the Cowboys actually give full control to Brian Schottenheimer and let him decide, who he's bringing in, or is it going to be more, micromanagement from the front office?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I do think that, if they are going to change defensive coordinator here, how it gets done and how they choose the next guy and who his staff has are all going to be very interesting questions, because you've had 4 of these scenarios that have not worked previously. And
last year with Mike Zimmer is a great example. Like they didn't let Zimmer pick his entire staff. They forced guys onto him like Al Harris. And I think it was working to a degree, but I also don't know if Zimmer loved the guys that he was working with either.
Yeah, and I think it's going to matter depending on. I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, I think it's going to matter depending on the kind of gravitas that the coach brings with them, right? Like if it's a well-established defensive coach that has a lot of skins on the wall, I think that they, the Joneses will probably give them the opportunity to kind of bring their own folks. The question becomes like exactly how this all kind of orders out a little bit, right? Do the Cowboys hopefully make that hire first before trying to evaluate whether or not they want to keep current staff on here? Because I do think that it's not always the case that these defensive coordinators want to bring in only their own guys. Correct. Right? So I do think that there may be some folks that the Cowboys new defense coordinator may want to bring on. But I agree that like let's not put the cart in front of the horse here. Like let's make sure we have the defensive coordinator and Brian Schottenheimer as the ones who are leading the hiring process, and that the defensive coordinator is getting what they need to do, what they need from these assistant coaches.
I mean, isn't that exactly what they did with Eberflus? I mean, Overstreet was in Chicago, Borgonzi was in Chicago. I mean, and
well. I mean, do you have a problem with that process, or do you have a problem with the coaches that were hired? Because I think those are two different things.
I mean, I do think you have to have your guys around you that know your system, that understand what you're doing. here becomes the disconnect for me. What is it that you're wanting to do? And then what style of players do you have there now that can implement into your system? Which I don't think that's at all what this staff has done, because they took Bland, Diggs, guys that were man coverage guys, and wanted to square peg a round hole with guys that Ravel, when they drafted him.
I was going to say they drafted a man coverage guy. This coaching staff did it themselves.
So did they then? I'm asking the question: who spoke for him in the draft room? Was it the scouts? Was it Overstreet? Who was it that? Because Jerry doesn't just make these picks. He doesn't just randomly look up there and go, yeah. Give me Thumper McGillicuddy right there, because I think we got him ranked 14 on the board. Guys have to stand up and endorse guys on that board. And so, who was that?
The other people.
And so that becomes the issue too with me, is it becomes an accountability issue.
Yeah,
Marcus and I talked about this. Who said it was okay to go trade a 4th round pick for Mingo? Well, we had a 2nd round grade on him. Well, maybe you were wrong when you had a 2nd round grade on him. Tell me, what did he do in Carolina that warranted you to step up and put a 4th round number on him? And so that's what I'm saying. You got to have a certain, and I know we're talking about coaching here, but the coaching has say in what goes on in the draft, and so there has to be some checks and balances with all of it.
Well, I think the other thing that Jerry doesn't do, or that Jerry does do, right, is that he gets a lot of opinions. I have zero. I mean, there's just zero. There's no way that Eberflus didn't sign off on this player on some form or fashion, right? Like, I mean, to the point where he said he couldn't use the player, right? Like, and maybe that was a mistake of a new coach with a new owner, not understanding whether or not he needed to step up and say something. But I mean, Eberflus has a relationship with the Joneses. He's coached with them before, and they respect his opinion a lot from his previous stop. And to me, like, Eberflus is supposed to be the backstop here, and he wasn't in his own. You know what I'm saying? Like, and if anything,
but Landon, Jerry's always done that. I mean, he did that. He did that with Rod Marinelli.
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem.
He let him talk him into picking Tristan Hill.
I don't have listen. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with that, but I also think that, like, it's added to the pile of negatives for Eberflus. Like, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, what I don't necessarily want is, and this has been a problem for the Cowboys, right? Is something happens, something bad happens. They make a mistake. They sign a bad contract. And then what happens? They compound that mistake by trying to overcorrect going the opposite direction, right? And to me, the worst thing that Jerry can do is, take the lessons of Tristan Hill and take the lessons of Ravel. And I don't think Ravel's a bad player. If anything, I think Ravel's a good player. The problem was Eberflus should have said something about the fact that he's not necessarily a good match for what he wants to do, or even more specifically, what he was willing to do, because that's the other thing. He had all these players. He knows how to call man coverage. He could have just called man coverage, or he could have said something, and instead he probably did neither, and that's how we got to the situation that we're in currently.
Yeah, but guys, I mean, I can tell you this, just having been on the headphones, guys call what they're comfortable calling in critical situations. That's a fact.
I agree with you. So make the mistake.
You say he knows how to call man coverage, but he may not be comfortable doing it in certain situations, which that is what he has shown over and over and over, right? Because let's just go back to the last game. I mean, you look at the first series of the game, he's coming after McCarthy. You look at the first series of the second half, they go 3 and out, and then guess what? He's right back into that comfort zone, right?
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. But my point here is that, like, this is a former head coach, and he wasn't a very good head coach. And maybe this is the kind of thing why, but he understands how this works. He needs to have the forethought. So when Jerry Jones asks him about this 3rd round corner that they want to take, and this guy's mostly a man coverage guy who hasn't played in his zone, and you know that he's going to be coming in to your very short staffed cornerback room halfway, that you may be relying on this player, and you're not comfortable. You also know that you yourself are not comfortable with calling man coverage on 3rd down when you need it, then you're the one with all the information. You're the one who needs to step up and say something and be responsible to your head coach and to your owner and to your GM and say, hey, this is the truth. I think this is a great player, but I'm probably not going to play a bunch of man coverage on 3rd downs when we need this guy. So just add that to your information. And here's the thing, maybe he did do that and the Cowboys still drafted him either way. But I think the evidence is kind of pointing towards the contrary. It's all
and that was going to be my whole point, is there seems to be a disconnect between the front office, the head coach, and the defensive coordinator. And I just keep coming back to Landon. I remember the night that the Cowboys hired Brian Schottenheimer, like 15 minutes after that was announced. It was announced that Matt Eberflus was going to be the defensive coordinator. And to me, there's just no way that I just don't believe that Brian Schottenheimer would have had a guy lined up already to be his defensive coordinator. This seems like it was forced on him a little bit. But the Cowboys also have a history, and this is
that's their pattern, right?
Yeah, and I think Will McClay deserves some blame for this as well. They have certain thresholds they like, on defense, whether it's, long arms for cornerbacks or certain players on the defensive line. And then they ask their defensive coordinators to fit him into their scheme. There's absolutely no way that Dan Quinn would have ever drafted Mozzie Smith. That's just not the type of player that he has ever used, right? But you spend a 1st-round pick on him because Will McClay in the front office likes him, and now we blame Dan Quinn for not knowing how to use that player when I'm sure he never wanted him before. It's this kind of thing that happens over and over and over again, and it's why it's hard to build a consistent defense, because you've got changing schemes, you got new defensive coordinators, but you've got a front office that likes to draft guys that they like to draft.
Well said. Well, I mean, that disconnect can't be an issue. You got to have the good teams, the good organizations have that synergy there. They're in sync, and you can see that, from the front office onto the field itself. I just thought too, listening to you guys all make great points. And I was just thinking about this. We talked about it a little bit after the Sunday night game, Coach and I. Just, you have a team that went 12-5 a couple of years ago. And I liken it to, I use the example of when the Lakers had Del Harris as their coach, former Mavs coach, one-time Laker coach, and then they brought in Phil Jackson to help them get over the hump. I know Eberflus has been around, but a lot of young guys on the staff, and it's easy to second guess now. It's easy to look back and look at the record and place blame. But I think the big question is, can this team, can they take that next step? While you have the offense that you have right now, you don't want to keep wasting years when you have Dak and CD and Pickens. We don't know if Pickens is going to be back, but with the offense that they have and then the pieces that they have in defense, can they find a way to get better?
Jeff, I think you can rebuild a defense a lot faster than you can rebuild an offense. And I think Philadelphia last year was a good example. 2023, they were awful in the second half of the year. They draft 2, guys on defense. They bring in Vic Fangio, and suddenly that defense wins a Super Bowl. I think it can be done fairly quickly.
Marcus and I did a podcast on this week, actually.
I know you did.
Yeah, and it was the question, is it's complicated, right? Because it's not just about personnel; it's about scheme improvements and not only just player acquisition, but personnel improvement, right? Like guys that you're watching the trajectories of where they're going to get better in the offseason. But I mean, I think, Marcus and I kind of did some simple math, and between the draft picks that you've got and the money that you've got in free agency, I think you're looking at probably 6-ish players that you would need to add to make a good impact, on a positive impact on this defense, and then maybe a scheme change. And I think, depending on the kind of quality that you need for those 6 players, we kind of counted it out as, I think, 4 starters and then 2 kind of rotational, like, think Solomon Thomas, like guys that play a lot that may not be, that are borderline starters, right? I think that's doable in a season if you're able to kind of find a way to mix and match which the resources you've got. And I think that like Marcus said, it's a lot easier to kind of repurpose and get the defense back up and running because it's a lot of reaction, right? It's athleticism. If you can get,
I got some numbers for you, Landon, real quick.
Yeah, let's hear it. Yeah,
2023, Philadelphia, they were 30th in the NFL in points per game with Sean Diassi. They fired him. 2024, they hired Vic Fangio. They drafted 2 defensive backs with their first 2 picks. They finished second in points per game. That is an example of how fast things can change if you get the right defensive coordinator and you can hit on a couple picks.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's doable. It's just about, like, it's hard. It's not going to be easy.
No.
And you got to get several things very right. But I certainly think that that it's doable. One more thing, real quick, before I just wanted to talk about Will McClay, and I think that it's talking about Will McClay feels like the third rail in Cowboys fandom, right? Like, he's just so well revered, and I think he deserves it. And I think he's been incredible for the Cowboys, and I think there's a reason that he's gotten lots of opportunities to interview, at other places outside of Dallas. I mean, it's hard not to look at what's going on with the kind of miscommunication stuff and not look at Will McClay, because part of the sell that we were given was that Will McClay was such a good glue guy between the scouting department and the coaches, because he's a coach himself. He was a Dallas Desperado coach for a long time, and that was part of the appeal. I think that they have got to find a way to solidify the communication that's happening, because I do agree with what Marcus was saying earlier, that, like, if you can't get aligned on how the cornerbacks are supposed to look on your defense versus what Will McClay thinks the cornerbacks are supposed to look like that's a pretty major disagreement, and it is a limiting factor in your ability to kind of get the players you need to run the defense that you've got.
All right.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you have to constantly be going over with.
Yeah, I agree.
What the guys that are out in the field, what they're looking at and what they're looking for and what you're looking for. Hey, what is it that whoever's coaching the defensive backs next year, what is it that you're looking for in a corner? What is it? I want to know certain characteristics, certain measurables of what you're looking for. And then I'm going to look for that in tune with you, and then I'm going to bring back who I think are the best guys. That's how you coordinate it up. But that is Will McClay's responsibility.
All right. Well, a lot of questions, and I also thought too, Coach, and we have to go to a break here, but I remember you had made the comment well before they even got to training camp about just bringing on a bunch of coaches that didn't have any NFL experience, and that could, I'm not saying that that's to cause the blame of anything specifically, but I just think with this group, they, like you said, they all have to be, everything has to be on the same page, and everybody pulling together and trying to get to that goal, which is winning the Super Bowl. All right, quick timeout. When we come back, we've got to talk about George Pickens and what's going on with him, and another recent podcast of the daily Locked On Cowboys show with Marcus and Mosher and Landon McCool. We'll get into that when we come back. This is the Cowboys Squad Show. All right, I want to talk about FanDuel because it's that time of the year with FanDuel and everything that they've got going on. And NFL Sundays, as you know, move fast. I mean, one big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place your bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And live betting is really at its best when the game starts to shift, right? You got a receiver that gets hot, a defense that tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. And FanDuel really, the cool thing is, lets you jump into that moment. So you get live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. You get player props update as guys heat up. And you can even bet the next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. I mean, it really keeps you locked into every snap, no pun intended, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, we're back. The Cowboys Squad Show. Marcus Mosher, Landon McCool, and the coach, Glenn Stretch Smith. You're smiling, Coach. I like that.
I like how you read that with that passion. The FanDuel, man, the games moves fast.
They do. They do, right? You would know.
Cowboys defensive backs don't move too fast.
There you go.
I guarantee you, amen to that.
All right, so Marcus landed another plug for the daily Locked On Cowboys podcast. And Marcus and Landon, you guys made a point that, paraphrasing, that fans should not be concerned about these kind of quiet games for George Pickens. Explain.
It's just, if the offense was struggling and it was like, hey, it's a struggle for them to get to 20 points, and we can't throw the ball, I would be concerned. But against the Lions, CeeDee Lamb had 120 yards in the first half. Ryan Flournoy ended up with 111 yards, and George Pickens held like 3 catches for 30 yards. Like, again, it's going to happen. You're not going to have 2 receivers average 100 yards every single game. Against Minnesota, they played a lot of cover 0. The Cowboys could not protect Dak Prescott. They couldn't push the ball down the field. But at the same time, Javonte Williams averaged 6.1 yards per carry. CeeDee Lamb had another 100-yard day. And they would have scored 34 points if they just missed or to make the field goals that they settled for. To me, it's a non-story until the offense starts to struggle. And I just don't think it is good the rest of the year. I think they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, I think that was the bottom line for me ultimately, is that it felt like people were talking about this when the offense was performing pretty well. And I think Marcus just gave you all the numbers, and I think George Pickens contributed to that because of the attention that George Pickens is demanding by this defense. So in those situations, I just view it as, Pickens did his job. It wasn't a situation where he got a whole bunch of targets and wasn't able to catch the ball. I think if the offense is operating and he's creating attention away from the other players and they're able to produce, I think people are trying to find a reason to complain about George Pickens because they know that George Pickens is a perceived malcontent. So look, the Cowboys have issues and issues on the offense, that we can talk about. But I don't think that George Pickens producing a ton of numbers week to week while the rest of the offense is producing is something that's high on my list of things to complain about.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have heard me say multiple times. I mean, as a matter of fact, I was talking to Tom Siskowski tonight, who was, we worked for the Cowboys forever. And I asked him, he was talking about George Pickens. And I said, okay, let's just say, he comes off, he's got a 9 route call to just go. And he comes blowing off the ball, and at 15 yards, he sees the safety coming up over the top. Is he just going to burn ass and haul ass into coverage? Or is he going to kind of gear himself down? And you know what? Every receiver in the NFL is going to do that. I don't understand where, just because one scout or somebody from Pittsburgh or somebody come out and said, well, George's elevator doesn't go all the way to the top. You know what? I don't see that. I don't see that as an issue. And I think he is a football player. And I think you got to do everything you can to keep him around here, because to me, he's shown nothing except he can make plays. And I think he wants to be that guy.
The Cowboys have a lot of problems. I mean, we just went through a whole bunch of them on defense. They have problems on offense. Landon and I talked about some of the play calling issues, the offensive line issues. We don't need to make up problems. This just isn't a problem to be concerned about. If Pickens only had 600 yards at this point in the season, okay, maybe we talk about how do they get him more involved. But you're talking about a guy who's already set his career high in receptions, yards, and touchdowns, who's playing the best football of his career, who had I think a bad game against Detroit, but not a bad game against Minnesota. The effort was there. The ball just didn't go his way because it was going to CeeDee Lamb. It's just not something that we need to spend a lot of time worrying about, because I think he's going to have some big games to finish the season. He's going to have 1,400 yards. And what are we going to complain about that?
It's the classic kind of, and I hate to, term it like this, but like sports talk radio kind of thing where it's like, because there's was once a problem and fandom knows about it. Like anytime the Cowboys lose, they can only point to what's familiar. Like that's, football is a sport for everybody, right? And everybody likes to talk about football, especially people who don't really understand football a ton. And so
there's people like that out there that talk about football that don't know.
Man,
it
feels like you're interacting with them every day, Marcus.
I can't help myself.
And so I think that it's fine, right? Like everyone loves to talk about football, and I think that that's a fun thing to do. But I think that what you see is that often when your team loses, everyone kind of gloms onto whatever narrative they're familiar with, and a very familiar narrative is George Pickens, isn't a huge effort guy, and maybe he's not trying hard. So all it takes is someone to see the score of the Cowboys game, see that George Pickens didn't have 100 yards or whatever their metric is for him having a good game, and then to kind of revert back to that narrative and regurgitate that onto hopefully Marcus's timeline and not mine.
Nice. It's been a weird couple days on Twitter, Jeff. Let me just tell you that.
You're all over it. So
no, I'm in the trenches here, buddy. It's
absolutely, absolutely.
He's got the gas mask on. The mustard gas is all above his head. He's diving into the bullets are flying. Marcus is in it right now.
Murray's the best linebacker the Cowboys have had over the last 10 years. Did you know
we're not doing that, Marcus. We're not bringing that in here. Okay.
What are you wanting to? I'm somewhere. I'm missing it. Is this the 6-7 gig again?
I mean, it might as well be. It's just as stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is it? What is you're not bringing in?
All right. Listen, Marcus. I'm going to give you 4 minutes, and we can talk about this for 4 minutes, and then we have to move on. Go.
There is a subsection of Cowboys Twitter that believes Kenneth Murray is not an issue on the Cowboys defense.
Issue,
yeah. They believe he's actually one of the better linebackers they've had over the last 8 years. Actually better than Leighton Vander Esch is what one of the arguments was at. Wow. And I that's it. That's all I need to say. I don't need 4 minutes. I just needed those 20 seconds.
All right. Well, that was good. That was well done. Well played.
I mean, no, it wasn't, but it's fine. Go ahead.
It's a lot of, and I think another topic, I think you guys have probably seen it this week, is final 3 games. Do the Cowboys rest their starters? Do they try to lose and try to get a higher pick? Do they?
Jeff, can I ask Coach about this? Because I do
hold on
value.
Hold on a minute. Is this question coming from the provost of Twitter?
No, this is real. No, this is real.
Fandom?
No, because I've been struggling with this, right? Because part of me does think,
I bet. Couch time struggling. Go ahead. I'm listening.
Part of me does think that it's important to try to build a winning culture. And listening to Quinnen Williams talk about his days with the Jets, I don't want the Cowboys to turn into that, where it's, they're a joke around the league and they're not competitive. But
losing becomes okay. That's
right. Where losing becomes accepted and okay, right? But when you're out of the playoffs and you've got these 3 games left, can you really build a winning culture when you're already out of the playoffs? Or do you start making some decisions for the future, like trying to evaluate Joe Milton?
Well, let me ask you something. Let's just use anybody. Name the player. Have you not seen enough of? Have you not seen enough of the running back to know he can play?
Oh, absolutely.
Javonte, do you need to see more from Javonte?
No, we've seen everything. He's been
right.
great.
So we know that. Okay. Do we need to see more from CD? Do we need to see more from George? Do we need to see more from Ferguson? Or do we need to see more from Span Ford? Do we need to see more from Schoonmaker? Do we need?
But how do you? I agree with everything you're saying. Like, I would like to see some of the
No,
young
you
kids
don't know
play.
what I'm saying. I made one damn point. You said everything.
How do you weigh that though versus trying to win? Because that's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
Don't go out there and say, boys, we're fixing to go out here and crap the bed.
Right.
You
I mean,
don't
can
say
never do
that. But
right.
what will you get your football team ready to play, and you challenge you challenge your team. I mean, you're talking about playing for an opportunity to maybe if it's not here, it's somewhere else. I mean, when you put it out there on game tape, it's in a Sharpie. You're not going and erasing it or whiteouting or whatever. So I mean, I'm from the school that, guess what? Go challenge your guys that you need to see something from, and go put them in these situations. Now, let's say I'm not sure that I need to see a 3-game set of it, but I certainly I would like to certainly see multiple halves of it. I would certainly like to see maybe even 2 full games. I want to see that. Much in the same way we can kick the Cleveland Browns all you want to. You know what? They're gonna know what Shedeur Sanders can do by the end of this set. They're going to have a pretty good feeling of knowing the direction that they want to go, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So, I mean, I'm for putting guys in the game that need to have playing time.
Marcus, let me ask you a question. Do you think that Trayvon Diggs, his knee is still hurt?
My bet is it's still sore, but he's healthy enough to play.
I think that's how you do this, right?
Yeah.
Is that
and I think hey, CeeDee Lamb, how's that high ankle?
Exactly.
And I think my guess is if they play this week against the Chargers, they play next week on Christmas Day because of all the national eyes, on Netflix. And then in week 18 is where you see guys like CeeDee Lamb sit and Tyler Booker sit and Tyler Smith, who's been dealing with tendonitis sit. Those kind of guys.
I think this is how this has always worked in the NFL, right? Is that you can't make it into I think even when you're tanking in the NBA or whatever, when that exists, it's a situation where you still don't talk about it. It's
the coaches aren't telling people to go and try to lose these games on purpose. You're just putting guys into the game to maybe lower your chances of winning.
Yeah, and I think that the NFL is the same way, right? Where it's like you would never ever whisper anything like this to your teammates or to to the people you're coaching. I think it's done in small moments in the way that you're managing the roster of the folks that are playing, right? Like, oh, you scratched your toe, Dak, maybe go sit over there for a little bit, right? Like it's that sort of thing where you're not asking guys to push through anything, and you're doing stuff like this. I think the other thing too is we should mention that I don't think we did that Josh Butler and Peyton Turner, and there was one more I can't remember
Phil Maffa.
Phil Maffa, that's right, have all come off of their list and opened their 21-day window. So the Cowboys are getting the opportunity to get these guys into practice to see if they can potentially pull them into games. I don't know if they're actually going to be active, and that will be interesting to see exactly if they make them game day active. But the Cowboys are in evaluation mode at this point, right? Like pulling these guys back
here's the thing you don't want to do. You don't want Phil Maffa picking up a blitz with Dak Prescott in the game. I mean, that's what you're talking about. I mean, that's 100%. That's what we're dealing with here.
But Coach, I want to ask you, let's say the Cowboys do win the next 3 games, right? And they miss the playoffs. Are those wins valuable in actually building a winning culture? Or do we get to the end of the season and it doesn't really matter?
No, I believe so. I mean, I think winning is just as contagious as losing is. Losing is contagious. I mean, look around at teams in the NFL that get beat, and you'll know that. I don't want to sit here and point, but I mean, if you can't tell that's a bad feeling in the building. It's not a good. It's just not a good, and it's not conducive to be a good teaching environment when you're when you're getting your ass kicked. I mean, it's not.
I'll also add that we've lost 2 games in a row already, right? So like losing the last 3 would be actually a 5-game losing streak, which is really not.
They're not going to do that. I'm going to tell you right now.
I'm just not from, and I know what you're saying, but I'm saying I would still. I think you need to understand what this team needs the most, and what they need the most is an evaluation of just like all the guys that you just talked about. I mean, they need to be evaluated. Maffa, Blue, they're 2 backs. They need playing time. Perrion Winfrey, you need to play him. Butler, he needs to get in the game. Now, how strategically you put him in the game, whatever. I don't think you sit and say, well, I'm going to put Perrion Winfrey on a pitch count. I think you challenge him and say, hey, bud, you're getting some playing time. We expect you to go out here and play at a very high level. And I would do that to everybody. I feel the same way about the receiver that they traded for. Why am I drawing a blank? Yeah. Put his ass in the game and see what he's got. I mean,
all right.
What is the downside? Because I know what I have with Pickens. I know what I have with Turpin. I know what I have with CD. What's the downside of playing him, Flournoy, and Tolbert? Because you think you're going to create a losing culture? I mean, I would say, you know what? That should be the same exact mentality that the Giants should be going in the game with, that Washington should be going in the game with, and quite frankly, you should be going in the game with that mentality.
All right. Quick final timeout, final segment coming up next. This is the Cowboys Squad Show. That was quick. Welcome back.
Whoa.
Yeah, I told you it was going to be quick. I just want to say real quick for the record, tanking, and I think it's like the worst thing that's ever happened to sports, but that's another topic for another time. All right. So we're talking about some players coming back. Guys, help me with this. So is Saturday the D-Day for Trayvon Diggs? And do you think they'll let him play this week, or are you sticking with what you guys said before?
Trayvon Diggs is not playing for the Cowboys ever again.
I had to ask.
I'm going to go ahead and just make that statement at this point, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd be shocked if Diggs ever played again for the Cowboys. I just don't see it. And honestly, there's really no reason to do it. I mean, you've got some guys that you want to see, Kalen Carson, Savon Ravel, Josh Butler. Play those guys. They have at least a chance to be on this team next year.
I mean, I agree. I think when you did not see him, when you didn't see him Sunday night, I think that's. I mean, that you don't need to see. You don't need to read any more into it than that. They're moving on, and barring something just outlandish happening, I don't think he ever puts on the Cowboys helmet again.
I don't think that they trust that he won't get injured too. Like, and that's the other thing too, is that they don't want to like.
See, I does see somewhere where since he signed that deal, he's played like in 19 of 47 or 46 games or something.
Ouch.
Yes. Yeah, he's not played very many games, and it's just at the point where I think both parties are tired, or they're ready for a divorce, and I think it's going to happen.
Yeah. All right, real quick before we go, home finale on Sunday against the Chargers team that has become very physical. They're starting to kind of hit their stride now with health and under Jim Harbaugh, but they beat up the Chiefs on Sunday. So this is going to be I think a very physical game, and they've got a lot to play for. They're still rolling.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think the Cowboys have proved pretty thoroughly that beating up on the Chiefs is not exactly a high watermark anymore. True. So there's something to keep in mind.
Jeff has no faith in the Cowboys making a run and hosting a home playoff game, I can tell. Yeah, it's going to be a very, very physical game. The Chargers have no tackles. They can't protect Justin Herbert, but they play a tough brand of football. I fully expect the Chargers to put up 27 points and this to be a 27-24 type of game.
I mean, I agree. Yeah, I think you're going to get a team in here that's chasing the Broncos, and guess what? They're not gonna let up. It's not even Harbaugh's style at all. So you know what? If you don't come ready and you don't make sure your mouthpiece is molded and your ass is taped up, you're gonna get crap knocked out of you. So that would be my message.
I wouldn't be shocked if Herbert had a career high passing day and B, the most terrible physical day that he's ever had in his life. Because I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up getting hit a lot and still throws for a whole bunch of yards. So we'll see.
All right. Real quick before we go, what's coming up on the daily Locked On Cowboys podcast?
Yeah, we've got a crossover show on Thursday with the Locked On Chargers guys, so make sure you check that out. On Friday, we'll preview the Charger game, but we're going to really do it from a long-term perspective. We're not going to super care about this matchup and diving into why we think they're going to win. We're going to tell you about some guys to keep an eye on for the long-term health of the Dallas Cowboys. So be on the lookout for that on Friday.
All right, Coach, we'll talk to you Sunday afternoon.
Sounds good. You guys have a good night.
All right.
You
Marcus
too, Coach.
Landon McCool, the co-host of the Daily Locked On Cowboys podcast. Check out their action the rest of the week, and we'll be all be back with you after the game on Sunday. This has been the Cowboys Squad Show.